She picked up my iPad to show her boyfriend vacation photos, then accidentally exposed my business account on the screen. $17.6 million. Right there. In front of my entire family. Hi, I'm Sabrina. I built my company from nothing quietly while they thought I was just getting by. But the moment they saw the number, they didn't ask how I did it. They asked how much I was giving them. What would you do if your own family saw you as a bank account instead of a person? Tell me in the comments. Have you ever felt invisible until you became useful? They said I was strong. What they meant was I learned how to disappear. I was 8 when my sister Chloe arrived too early. It was a freezing January night in Duluth, Minnesota, the kind of cold that stuck to your breath and made your boots feel like stone. I was dreaming about the science fair when the headlights sliced through my bedroom window, dragging me awake. Moments later, Grandma Marie stood in the doorway, wrapped in her old green coat, gently patting her thighs like she was coaxing a cat. "Up we go, honey. Just a little trip to my house, okay?" She didn't say why, but I could tell by the way she kept glancing at the hallway that something had cracked open in the night. I pulled on my thick socks, stepped into the cold, and didn't ask questions. We drove in silence through snow-glazed streets. Grandma hummed softly an old hymn, I think, but her knuckles were white against the steering wheel. At the hospital, fluorescent lights buzzed as nurses moved like shadows. I stood beside a glass incubator breath fogging the plastic and looked down at Chloe for the first time. She was impossibly small, her skin flushed and shiny tubes sprouting from her nose and arms like strange roots. I reached out toward the clear shell, instinctive, curious. My mom's voice stopped me. "Don't touch," she said without looking at me. "We can't let her get sick." The way she said her soft but absolute made it clear there were 2 daughters now, but only one needed protection. I tucked my hand into my sleeve. Back home, everything shifted like snow settling in a storm. The living room, once scattered with puzzles and popcorn bowls, was now a battlefield of silence. A bottle of sanitizer sat by every doorway. Our couch was covered in a white sheet. A humidifier hissed in the background like it was warning us to keep our voices down. I wasn't allowed in Chloe's room. I wasn't even allowed near her formula bottles. If I sneezed, I'd be sent to Grandma's, no questions asked. The first time it happened, I thought it was a treat. Grandma made warm apple pie and let me wear her old sweaters. But by the 3rd time, it didn't feel like a visit. It felt like exile. At school, I tried harder. I got a perfect score on my math quiz, and my teacher, Mrs. Cowell, the one with the loud earrings, drew a sunburst around my name. I walked home through slushy sidewalks holding the paper like it was made of gold foil. When I stepped into the kitchen, the air smelled like bleach and peppermint. Chloe's monitor beeped steadily from the living room. I held up the quiz. "Mom, look. I got 100. She turned briefly from the changing table, thermometer in hand. "That's great, sweetheart," she said. "Could you check if we have any more formula?" I stood there, the quiz fluttering slightly in my hand from the draft near the door. "Okay," I said. By dinner, the paper was gone. After that, I stopped leaving my drawings on the fridge. One by one, they vanished, replaced by weekly schedules and reminders to sterilize bottles. So I kept them for myself instead. I found an old shoebox under my bed, one that used to hold Chloe's baby shoes, still too big for her. I lined the bottom with soft tissue, then folded my quiz and placed it inside. That became my gallery, a place only I knew about. My castles, my dragons, my sunburst math quizzes. I didn't need a magnet anymore. I needed space where nothing disappeared unless I chose to let it. One afternoon, I sat cross-legged on the hallway floor, coloring a drawing of a lake with a swan-shaped island. Through the open kitchen window, I heard my mom talking to Mrs. Hanley from next door. "She's always been independent," Mom said. "Sabrina understands. She doesn't need much." I froze the crayon still in my hand. The blue tip broke under the pressure. I stared at the jagged edge and realized I wasn't supposed to hear that, but also maybe I was. Maybe that was the point. No, I didn't understand. I didn't understand why my voice had to be quiet, why my cough meant exile, why my wins disappeared by dinner time. I didn't understand how a child can vanish from a household simply by not needing help. That night, I lay in bed listening to the muffled clicks of the baby monitor. I thought of the fridge of the drawings that once made my parents smile, of the way my dad used to trace my name with his finger whenever I showed him a certificate. None of that had happened in weeks. Maybe longer. I got up, crept to the window, and watched the snowfall drift sideways under the porch light. The whole world looked like a snow globe someone had shaken too hard. I pulled the shoebox from under my bed and added the Swan Lake drawing folded neatly between the math quiz and a watercolor of Grandma's pie. I ran my fingers along the box's edge, then closed the lid. It clicked softly shut, a sound so final it made my chest tighten. That was the night I realized disappearing doesn't always look like vanishing. Sometimes it looks like being quiet, being good, being the child who doesn't make a fuss. And it was only the beginning. By 13, I stopped expecting applause. I learned to work instead. My first real job was at Sugar Pines Bakery, a brick front shop on the corner of 4th and Maple that smelled like butter and brown sugar even before you opened the door. You could hear soft jazz playing through the screen door in fall, and in winter, the front windows fogged with steam from coffee pots and cinnamon rolls. I'd walked in on a Thursday afternoon with a printed resume that had no work experience and a heart full of hope I didn't quite know how to express. Mrs. Lorraine stood behind the counter tying a twine bow around a pastry box. She looked at me once, eyes calm, slate blue, and asked, "You any good at wiping down tables?" "I'm quiet," I said, "and I learn fast." "That'll do," she said, and handed me an apron. I started the next day. I swept under chairs, restocked napkins, memorized where each muffin flavor went in the display case, and how many almond croissants usually sold out before noon. I kept a little notepad in my pocket, not because she asked me to, but because I wanted to get it right. No one had asked me to be good at something before, not like this. At home, no one asked where I was going after school. Chloe had just turned 10 and was deep into ballet rehearsals. She came home every evening with new leotards, stories about costumes, and glitter stuck to her elbows. Mom hovered with bobby pins and makeup remover while Dad tried to fix the radiator again. No one noticed the smell of powdered sugar that lingered on my jacket. Sugar Pines became my place, a world of order and warmth where I could fold boxes in peace and hear myself think between the clink of coffee cups and the soft thud of the register drawer. Mrs. Lorraine didn't talk much, but she paid attention. She never asked about my family. Instead, she taught me how to judge the doneness of scones by smell and how to pull parchment paper just fast enough to keep the bottoms from burning. "You do with your eyes what some people need instructions to do," she told me once. "That's rare. Keep that," I nodded. I didn't know what to say. Praise still felt foreign, but I stored it away like a recipe I might need someday. By my junior year, I was working 4 days a week and saving every dollar. I kept a green notebook full of totals, tips, wages, coins from the sidewalk. I didn't expect anyone to pay for college. Not after Mom said, "You're the practical one, Sabrina. You'll find a way." Chloe was trying theater that year. She had a new drama teacher who said she had natural presence, and soon she was cast as a fairy queen in a school production. I watched from the 3rd row while the whole family clapped for her glitter wings and purple eyeshadow. No one asked why I left right after the curtain call. I filled out college applications in the bakery's back office between shipments of flour. I used the store printer typed essays in Google Docs and Googled how to write a strong personal statement during lunch breaks. Mrs. Lorraine noticed one evening while I was scribbling edits on a paper napkin. "You applying somewhere good? I'm thinking about Northwestern," I said. She raised an eyebrow. "Ambitious?" I shrugged. "Bring your essay tomorrow," she added. "If you're going to dream big, you better say it well." The next day, I brought 3 drafts. She circled and crossed out with a red pen sipping tea from her ceramic mug that said, "Don't rush the dough." She pointed to a paragraph and said, "Don't write to impress. Write to be remembered. You don't need to shine to be seen. You just need to keep standing." Those words followed me home that night, echoing somewhere between my ribs. By December, the windows of the bakery glittered with tiny gold stars, and the heater gave out a faint buzz that made the place feel like a gingerbread house. I was restocking biscotti when the notification came through on my phone. The subject line read, "Northwestern University, congratulations." I didn't move at first. The letters stared back at me like they were for someone else. My hands shook as I opened the message. "Full tuition, housing, meal plan, all of it. I felt the tears before I realized I was crying. Mrs. Lorraine looked up from behind the counter. Sabrina. I turned the screen toward her. She read silently, then gave a short nod and walked around the register. Her hug was steady, solid, like a tree you didn't know had been behind you the whole time. You earned that, she said. Don't let anyone make you forget it. That night, I printed the letter and folded it carefully, pressing along the creases. At dinner, I slid it onto the table next to the salad tongs. Chloe was talking about how her choir teacher might nominate her for a competition in Chicago. Mom glanced at the letter. Oh, wow, she said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Northwestern, that's impressive. Let's not say too much tonight, though. Chloe's feeling a bit nervous about her group audition this weekend. I nodded and reached for the bread basket. After dinner, I took the letter upstairs. My room smelled faintly of vanilla from the old hand lotion Grandma had given me. I opened the shoebox under my bed, my private collection, and placed the letter between the third-grade math quiz and a charcoal sketch of the lake where we used to fish. No applause, no fridge magnet, but a full ride tucked into cardboard and tissue paper. And this time I didn't feel invisible. I felt prepared. Everyone thought I was digging through junk, but I knew better treasure just hides where no one looks. My internship in Chicago began quietly in the spring of 2018. The office was located above a dry cleaner wedged between a tailor studio and a Chinese takeout place that always smelled faintly of sesame oil. My cubicle sat across from the supply closet and beside a perpetually humming copy machine. No windows, just fluorescent light and shelves lined with outdated gemology textbooks. But to me it was sacred ground. I wore thin white gloves every day and carried my own jeweler's loop on a cord around my neck. Most interns were there for course credit or something to pad a resume. I was there because the feeling I got when I held a 100-year-old ring under a lens was the same. I used to feel staring at Grandma Marie's hairpin in the sun, a quiet awe, like time had folded itself in half and let me peek inside. That summer, a box came in marked Estate Costume Jewelry. My supervisor, Margaret, asked me to sort through it for anything mildly interesting. At the bottom, beneath tangled chains and plastic earrings, I found a small brooch with enamel so delicate it looked hand-painted. The metal was heavier than it should have been. There was a near-invisible maker's mark on the back, faded like the last note in a song. I stayed after hours researching. Online catalogs, old museum archives, scanned journals. The next morning, I placed my notes on Margaret's desk. It's not costume, I said. It's a Henri Laurent. French artisan, early 1920s. He only made 6 of these before his studio burned down. Most were thought to be destroyed. She peered through the loop, nodded slowly, then leaned back. You have a good eye, she said. And that was all. But a week later, the brooch sold at auction in Seattle for $42,000. For the first time, my name was mentioned in the internal bulletin tucked between 2 client invoices, appraisal credit Holloway S. After that, more miscategorized items started finding their way onto my desk. Quietly. No one said anything out loud. But I noticed. By late 2020, I had saved enough from contract work and freelance verifications to open my own firm. I chose Milwaukee because the rent was manageable, and the antique scene was steady but overlooked. My office was on the 3rd floor above a small Italian cafe, and every afternoon, the scent of espresso and tomato bisque drifted through the vents. I called it Aurum and Iris. Aurum, the Latin word for gold. Iris, for the flower my mother used to grow before Chloe's arrival, pulled her into something quieter, colder. It felt right, something old, something beautiful, something no one asked for. The space was small. 1 wooden desk I rescued from a resale warehouse, a rolling lamp with a loose switch, and 2 folding chairs with mismatched cushions. I cleaned the floor myself with lemon oil and lit a soy candle in the evenings. My apartment was just a few blocks away, bare walls, no Arta mattress on the floor, and 1 potted plant I kept alive out of spite. But it was mine. Every invoice, every signature, every gemstone tested beneath my microscope came with my initials at the bottom. My first clients were estate lawyers, pawn shop owners, and once a priest who inherited a box of rosary beads and wanted to know if any were worth keeping. I charged less than the big firms and worked longer hours than most would find reasonable. I also began sending $3,000 a month to my parents. There was never a formal request. It started after Mom mentioned Chloe needing a new laptop for her digital arts class, followed by a passing comment about how Dad's been working overtime. But things are tight. I set up an auto transfer with the label family support. Mom sent a one-line text. "You're such a blessing." She didn't ask what I was doing for work. No one did. Chloe was now majoring in interior wellness design, something about spatial harmony and plant placement. I didn't ask. She posted vacation pictures from Cabo in a pastel swimsuit with the caption, "Rewarding myself for surviving another semester." I scrolled past them like they were weather reports. In the spring of 2021, I hired my first assistant, Maya Kwan, 23, freshly graduated from UW-Madison, with calloused fingers and a quiet voice. She had a patience most people spend a lifetime trying to develop. I trained her to examine gemstone facets under low light, to run her thumb gently along clasp seams, and most importantly, to listen to her intuition. One Friday afternoon, Margaret visited from Chicago. We met for coffee at the cafe downstairs. She still took hers, black, no sugar. "You ever think about starting something of your own?" she asked. I smiled into my cup. I already did. Back upstairs, I showed her our latest commission, an heirloom collection from a Boston family whose estate lawyer had found me through a colleague. There was an Art Deco tiara with tiny seed pearls, 3 platinum rings etched with initials, and a silver locket that clicked shut like a secret. Margaret picked up one piece and held it against the light. "You're not just finding things," she said. "You're building something." I didn't say anything. I just nodded and returned to the intake ledger. That night, as I reboxed a set of early 1900s cufflinks, my phone buzzed with a familiar name. Mom. Her voice was soft, almost rehearsed. "Hi, sweetie. Just wanted to ask if there's any chance you could help a little more. Chloe's tuition just went up and your father's teaching load was cut. We're short about $4,000. I didn't speak right away. She's doing her best," Mom continued. "You know how passionate she is." I looked at the opal ring in front of me, cool, brilliant, fragile, in all the ways Chloe never was. "How much are you thinking?" I asked. $7,000 would really help, she said. There was no apology in her voice, no hesitation, just the quiet confidence of someone who had forgotten they were asking for anything at all. "I'll see what I can do." After I hung up, I sat in my chair and let the silence settle. The city lights blinked through the blinds, and the room smelled faintly of dust and bergamot. I could still hear Grandma's voice in the back of my mind. Real treasure never screams for attention. I leaned back, closed my eyes, and thought not of Chloe, not of tuition, but of a girl in a bedroom once folding a math quiz into a shoebox. Success, I realized, wasn't about what people saw. It was what I chose not to say. I didn't plan to make Christmas dinner unforgettable. Chloe did that for me. December 24th arrived, blanketed in snow, the kind that muted sound and made the streets of Duluth look like a Christmas card, still white and just a little too perfect. Inside my parents' house, the dining room glowed with soft gold lights. Cedar garlands draped the banister, and the table was set with mismatched china we hadn't used in years. The smell of rosemary potatoes and roast duck lingered in the air like a memory trying to matter. No one acknowledged the catering invoice I paid in full the week before. There were 20 of us relatives from nearby towns, a couple of cousins from Chicago, and the usual family orbit of, "How's school, you still single? And what is it you do again?" I stood quietly near the sideboard, refilling water glasses, offering wine. No one noticed. But that was nothing new. Chloe floated through the evening in a cranberry velvet dress and silver heels that clicked against the hardwood with every step. She laughed easily, tossing her hair back, complimenting everyone's sweaters as if she were hosting. Her boyfriend Liam trailed behind her like a loyal golden retriever, nodding when she spoke, chuckling when she pouted. I had placed my iPad on the credenza near the living room archway earlier that afternoon, mostly to review a last-minute appraisal file from Tokyo. I hadn't bothered to close my banking app. A rookie mistake in hindsight. Between dessert and coffee, Chloe reached for the iPad to show Liam vacation photos from Cabo. She swiped casually, giggling at a beach selfie, and then paused. Her brows furrowed. "Huh," she said. Then again louder. Wait, what's this? The room didn't quiet right away. There was still the sound of forks on china, a cousin trying to cut into gingerbread too firm from sitting out. But the silence spread gradually, first across the adult table, then the kids, then the side conversations. By the time Chloe turned the iPad around, all eyes were on her. The screen displayed a single number, $17,604, $832.08 banking app. Business account. My name at the top. No ambiguity. Is this real? She asked, half laughing, not quite sure if she wanted the answer. Someone inhaled sharply. Grandma Marie's hand stilled mid-reach for her tea. Evan, my cousin, with more jokes than sense, raised his wineglass. To Sabrina, he said cheerfully, "Our family's secret millionaire." There was laughter, nervous short. Then someone muttered, "That's more than I'll see in 10 lifetimes." I didn't flinch. I simply reached over and locked the screen. Diana, my mother, cleared her throat. "Sabrina, sweetheart? Why didn't you say anything?" Her voice was tight, trying to sound light, but laced with accusation. I'd heard that tone before, when I got a scholarship, when I didn't need her help, when my success inconvenienced the family narrative. I placed my napkin beside my plate and looked around the table. "You didn't ask," I said simply. Chloe leaned forward, her expression twisted in confusion. "Wait. So all this time you've had what?" Even more, I didn't answer her question. Instead, I looked at Mom and Dad. "I've been sending you money. Every month, quietly. I helped cover Chloe's school fees. I paid for the study abroad program. The Paris purse she posted about on Instagram, I paid for that too." "Greg," my father blinked. "We never asked you to." "No," I said. "You just assumed I would." And I did. Diana's lips pressed into a thin line. "You should have told us. We're a family." "Families don't keep secrets like this." I nodded. "Families also don't ignore effort, or erase it." Chloe's eyes were wide, her hand still clutching the stem of her wineglass. "But I thought Mom and Dad said they were helping me. I didn't know it was you." "Exactly," I replied. Grandma Marie hadn't spoken all evening. Now she set down her teacup with a small click and said softly, "Some gifts are loud, others are quiet. Doesn't mean they're smaller." The room fell silent again, but this time no one tried to fill it. I stood slowly and gathered my plate. No one offered to help. As I crossed toward the kitchen, a cousin whispered, not so quietly, "She could at least share, you know. What's the point of all that money if you hoard it?" I paused by the hallway, not out of anger, just long enough to listen. Then I kept walking. Upstairs, I wrapped my coat around my shoulders, tucked my scarf into the collar, and glanced out the frosted window. The snow outside shimmered under the porch light. Below, I could hear faint murmurs. Plates being scraped. Someone laughing too loudly. Life resuming. But nothing I knew would be quite the same. Success in this house wasn't celebrated. It was dissected, weighed. Measured against the expectations no one spoke aloud but everyone enforced. Downstairs, someone turned on a holiday playlist. The familiar croon of Bing Crosby drifted up like smoke. And I realized they had finally seen me, not for who I was, but for what I had. They didn't ask if I was okay. They asked if I was still sending the money. The morning after Christmas was quiet in Milwaukee, the kind of gray that blurred hours together. I brewed coffee I didn't drink and left my phone face down on the kitchen counter, though I could still hear it vibrating every few minutes. Buzz, pause, buzz again. 39 texts, 7 voicemails, 3 missed calls from Chloe, 2 from Mom, and 1 from Dad, though his message only said, "Call your mother." The language of duty, not concern. None of them asked how I was, only why I had embarrassed them. I sat at my desk, smooth, walnut, clear surface, just the way I liked it. The desk lamp cast a soft circle of amber light on a folder stamped Feldman Legal. I'd called Marcus before finishing my second sip of tea. He arrived an hour later, punctual as always, wearing a navy sweater and the kind of calm expression lawyers practice like a second language. "We can issue formal letters," he said, reviewing the messages I'd forwarded. Nothing harsh, just clear boundaries. Emotional harassment entitlement claims implied financial obligations, all addressed. I nodded, and the monthly transfers he asked, I hesitated for just a moment, then opened my laptop. 2 clicks later, the recurring $7,000 labeled family support tuition disappeared from the schedule. Marcus watched without comment. But when I looked up, he gave a small nod, like I'd set something right in motion. Later that day, Chloe posted 3 Instagram stories. First, a moody quote in cursive, "Not everyone with money has a heart." Second, a slow-motion video of her sipping iced matcha at an upscale cafe tagged in Minneapolis. Third, an old photo of the two of us at her 5th birthday, me holding the cake, captioned, "Some people forget where they came from." Maya Kwan texted, "Just saw your sister's passive aggressiveness. Want me to bring a pie and some sarcasm?" I smiled. Sarcasm first, pie later. Even humor, though, couldn't shake the ache in my ribs. Not quite sadness, not anger. Just something hollow, like a room after the guests have gone. Grandma Marie arrived the next afternoon with a small suitcase and a tin of butter cookies tied in blue ribbon. She stepped inside, looked around and said, "You finally did it. No judgment, no questions. Just the sound of her coat unzipping and her boots landing softly on the rug." By evening, the two of us sat in my home office. Outside fog curled along Lake Mendota like breath caught between seasons. I turned away from the window and said, "I feel guilty, but also lighter." Grandma wrapped her hands around a warm mug. "They were never going to love you for your effort, only for your output." Her words settled like snow, quiet, final, oddly comforting. I slept better that night than I had in months. No phone buzzes, no unsaid expectations hanging like laundry on a line. On December 28th, a voicemail arrived from Aunt Renee. "Now that things are out in the open, I was wondering if you could help with Leo's college fund. He's applying to Dartmouth just like you did." I forwarded it to Marcus without a word. The messages slowed after that. 1 or 2 came from extended cousins, expressing shock at how cold I had become. Someone even suggested therapy. I responded by baking lemon muffins with Grandma and teaching her how to use Google Maps. We didn't talk much about the family. Instead, we organized a gem shipment from Geneva and debated the merits of Edwardian versus Georgian brooch settings. For the first time in years, the silence in my home felt whole, like something chosen, not imposed. That Friday, while sorting client records, an email popped into my inbox. Subject line: International Heritage Conference. Speaker invitation. Paris, 2024. I stared at the screen, blinking twice. It wasn't just an invite. It was a keynote. My name appeared 3 times in the first paragraph, clean, professional, unambiguous. Sabrina Holloway, not Chloe's sister. Not Diana's invisible daughter. I didn't click accept right away. Instead, I looked over at Grandma curled on the sofa under a knit blanket reading a paperback with one hand and her tea in the other. She glanced up, raised an eyebrow. 5-letter word for freedom, she asked, pencil tapping her crossword. I smiled. Could be space. Or maybe peace. She nodded. Both fit. One's a place, the other's a decision. I folded the email window, not deleting it, just giving it room to breathe. There was no more guilt, only clarity. When I stopped asking for love, I started living. March in Madison felt different this year. Not just because the snow had thinned, or because the light stayed longer, but because the silence in my house no longer weighed me down. It lifted me. The mornings came pale blue and soft. My home near Lake Mendota, once minimalist and cautious, had quietly become a place of warmth. Antique sketches framed the hallway. The scent of cinnamon and apples still lingered in the kitchen from the loaf Grandma and I baked yesterday. My coat hung beside hers on the hook by the door. 2 mugs always on the drying rack side by side. Just enough, not more. The conference in Paris was held in a limestone building across from the Seine, its walls etched with centuries of conversation. The auditorium had velvet chairs and high vaulted ceilings that made every word feel like a promise. I took the podium under a wash of amber light, my notes crisp in my hands, my voice steady, not loud, not dramatic, just mine. I spoke of legacy, not the kind built from headlines or bank accounts, but the quiet value of memory woven into metal. I told them about how history can rest in the hinge of a locket, how sorrow can gleam softly in a worn wedding band,